Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome you all to today's e-Nischit Clinic. I suppose it's the 60th one, and I must please all of you please sit comfortably for the session. And I must say that I really appreciate all of you joining today because in this COVID time, when we are going through such difficult times and in every way we are feeling bogged down, if we can keep our commitment towards learning strong and connect through these wonderful platforms like ECO, it is indeed very encouraging and motivating. So I really appreciate all of you joining and actively participating in these sessions. Helping me in this endeavor are my panel members. There is Dr. Vandana from Share India. She's the one, please say hi, Dr. Vandana. Yeah, she's the one who coordinates the whole session and in execution, helps her in execution. Then we have Mr. Ajit from Share India, and we have Mr. Gaurav from Eco India, who supervises and who also looks after the IT part. And of course, we have today our panel, the expert, Dr. Sethi. Dr. P. Sethi is a senior specialist in the Department of TB and Respiratory Diseases at NIT New Delhi, and she has a vast amount of knowledge and experience spanning over a decade in various respiratory diseases, including tuberculosis. So we are indeed very lucky to have her today and get enlightened by her. So, ma'am, can you please say hi to the participants so that they can see?
Hello everyone.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So before I move on to the agenda, can I please ask Dr. Mr. G to pull on the pre-attendance attendance poll? Yeah, thank you. So please mark your attendance. It is very important. So as you all mark the attendance, so let me take you through the agenda. So today we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is lymphadenitis in a HIV patient. Why it is important? Because it is a very, very common thing, common clinical scenario that we encounter, primarily because HIV is a very lymphotropic virus. So lymphadenopathy becomes very common and it can come in any stage of disease from just seroconverted to an end stage. So we inquire almost on daily basis, we see such patients. And then we have our dilemmas and concerns. Every time we see a lymphadenopathy in HIV patient, we think, oh, is it HIV related? Or is it not HIV related? Or is it due to HIV itself? So there are so many questions when it comes, which we hopefully will be solving today. And the main concern that remains is when we see a lymphadenopathy in HIV is that we should not miss a curable or a potentially curable cause of a lymphadenopathy, like it be it TB or be it other infections or sometimes malignancies. So it is indeed, and it's always an understatement how important this topic today that we are discussing today is. So I hope all of you please pay a lot of attention to whatever the expert says and the tells us. I would really appreciate that. And please mark the attendance also.
We request you all that while you are putting your attendance, on that attendance poll, you need to mark on every number. For example, if there is no care coordinator attending right now, you need to mark as zero. If you won't mark it as zero and submit it, try to submit it, it won't be submitted. So you need to mark on every column which it says.
So now I invite Supriya, who's a staff nurse at ART Plus Center, NGGH, Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh, to kindly present the case for today.
Good afternoon, all. I'm
Good afternoon.
Supriya Battula from NGGH Vijayawada. The case presentation Vijayawada NGGH. Uh, a 30 years old male PLHIV diagnosed with EPTB, TB lymph node and started on CAT1 ATT on 8 September 2020. Date of ART registration 21st July 2012. Date of ART initiation 26th July 2012. Date of TB confirmation 4th September 2020. Date of ATT initiation 8th September 2020. Type of TB detected extrapulmonary TB and there is no previous history of ATT. Other details, patient was diagnosed with HIV in July 2012 and was initiated on ART with Zedalan regimen in July 2012. Patient used ARV only for 15 days and had been LFU since August 2012. During during the time of initiation of ART, his 4S status was negative with stable clinical condition. Patient wife is on ART since 2012. Patient had been retrieved back to the program and was presented with complaints of pain and swelling at neck and axilla from July 2020. That is lymphadenopathy, cervical and axillary. He underwent ultrasonography neck and axilla, which showed enlarged lymph node with loss of size of 20 by 12 mm in left axilla. Corey Cox etiology and had been advised to FNAC and which showed cervical and axillary lymph node, show plenty of neutrophils, lymphocytes, epithelial cells, clusters and giant cells against blood, mixed causes, neutrocyte background, features suggested of cold abscess. Patient had been referred back to NGGH ART center and based on the report and clinical condition, patient was initiated on ETT cat1 regimen with 4 pills per day of 55 kgs of body weight. Patient had been followed up and could contact after 1 month and initiated on ART with TLD, Omnidai and additional DTG 50 mg along with ATT on 6th October 2020 as per the new guidelines. Patient had been sent to serous fluid from lymph node to CB node for drug sensitivity on 3rd November 2020. The report was MTB detector, rifampicin status is sensitive. Patient is now clinically stable. The CD4 count at ART center, the baseline is 317 on 21st July 2012. And now, at retrieval time, the CD4 count is 58 on 8th September 2020. The laboratory report on 25th July 2012, the serum creatinine 0.9, the bilirubin 1, SGOT 30, PT 32. On 8th September 2020, creatinine is 0.9, OT is 30, HB is 14.4. The other relevant on 28th, the CB nots serial fluid on 3rd November 2020 is MTB detected rifampicin status sensitive. ART regimen TLD OD plus DTG 50 mg OD, ATT regimen CAT1 FDC 4 pills per day IP second per. CPT using tuberculosis issues for discussions. Tuberculosis lymphadenopathy, how it is different from pulmonary TB in case of disseminated to other regimen, which organ are commonly affected. Possibility of patient having lymph node TB without showing of Forest complex, weight loss, fats, fever and cough. Early sign of lymph node TB and its treatment. Thank you. You can see the reports. White card. Pictures, patient pictures. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for presenting the case. One thing I would like to know, CBNAT report, has it come? It was awaited at the time you made the case. CBNAT, if you are aware, if you know that.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So CBNAT report, did it come? The report was awaited, so
Report was MTB detected.
it's still not come. Report has come or report hasn't come?
Reports came, ma'am.
Okay, so it is showing MTB and it is
MTB detected.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for presenting the case so well. And before I summarize the case, can I please ask the team to pull up the p-test poll as I summarize the case? Yes, so today we have this case of a 30-year-old male HIV, fairly simple case of a PL-HIV case who was diagnosed of HIV in July 2012, but he did not take the treatment and was retrieved back to the program as late as 2020 when he presented with lymphadenopathy. And he had axillary and swelling at neck as we had seen in the pictures, and then he was investigated and it was showing the cold abscess kind of a picture, which is enough of evidence to put him on ATT, and he was rightly put on that. And the DTG dose was adjusted because of ATT, it was because of interaction with rifampicin, and it was 50 milligram of DTG was added in the evening. And so the CBNAT, his CD4 at present is very low, 58. Probably he did not take the ART at the right time when he was advised. And he has this CBNAT report which has just come, which they are saying that MTB detected and rifampicin sensitive case. So case is fairly simple, but it's such a, most of the time in the very, very common situation, we do all kinds of mistakes and we overlook things. So we need to know our basics very, very well. So let's see, you please take your pre-test and then we are going to have a diabetic. Please, everybody, please attempt this test because it's anonymous. Nobody knows your answer.
Madam, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the thing is, Madam.
You want to ask it, if you right now if you have a question regarding case, you can ask.
Yeah, regarding the case only, what is the question is, Madam has told MTB detected. I want to know the rifampicin resistant state is sensitive or not sensitive? Resistance detected or not detected?
You are speaking too fast.
Sensitive, sir. Sensitive.
Okay, thank you. Now my question is whether rifampicin resistance detected or not detected. She has told it is sensitive. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Ananya, we can easily proceed now towards the didactic.
Okay. So I invite Dr. Sethi to please kindly present our didactic now.
Thank you, Dr. Vanna and Dr. Ananya, for giving me this opportunity to talk on TB lymphadenitis. I would request Dr. Vanna to start the screen share, please.
Sure.
I'll be talking on TB lymphadenitis. As you all know, there is, as with pulmonary tuberculosis in HIV and non-HIV patients, the presentation is more or less same with few differences, which you all know, and that has been highlighted as and when the different didactics have been taken. Similarly, with tuberculosis lymphadenitis also, there are similarities as well as a few dissimilarities between the two scenarios. We will discuss as a whole, TB lymphadenitis as a whole, and highlight the differences wherever it is noted. So, tuberculosis lymphadenitis is among the most frequent presentation of extrapulmonary tuberculosis. So, any lymph node tuberculosis is considered as an extrapulmonary TB. Pulmonary TB is something which affects your lungs. These are lymph nodes which are different from your lungs. So, they may be in your chest, they may be in your mediastinum, but then also they are considered as an extrapulmonary organ, extrapulmonary tuberculosis. So this is one of the commonest form of extrapulmonary tuberculosis after pulmonary TB. And this is responsible up to 43% of peripheral lymphadenopathy. TB is responsible apart from different reasons. One of the reasons is malignancy, as you know, but tuberculosis is one of the major component reason for lymphadenopathy in high burden countries like India. And of course, Africa falls into another one of the countries which also falls into this group. In rural India, the prevalence of TB lymphadenitis in children up to 14 years of age is approximately almost 4.4 cases per 1,000 cases of tuberculosis. Dr. Vanna, can you change it? Tuberculosis and the differences. As you already know, the risk of TB doubles within the first year of HIV seroconversion. This is due to rapid depletion of TB specific T helper cells. Thereafter, the risk of TB progressively increases with declining immunity. This is, we are talking as in general about tuberculosis as a disease in a patient with HIV. HIV-infected individuals appear to be more likely to acquire MTB if exposed, and they are also at increased risk of developing active TB from reactivated latent infections. Apart from a fresh infection, one with HIV, these patients are immunocompromised. So those latent infections where they have been infected earlier, but they did not have a disease, if they contract HIV, these patients are at a higher risk of developing reactivation of this latent infection. So both are common, reinfection as well as reactivation in immunocompromised cases. One of the major causes is HIV, the others could be TB, diabetes mellitus, it could be patients on steroids, it could be malignancy on immunosuppressive agents. So these are all causes of immunosuppression. So any immunosuppression could lead to reactivation of a latent infection. Next. HIV infection is a risk factor for accelerated progression of TB following exposure. Not only do they get a new infection or a reactivation, but the speed at which it progresses, the disease. Every disease has a pattern of progression in every patient, in a healthy individual. So the pattern differs in a patient of immunocompromised in a patient. So this pattern, which usually may take, suppose it takes 2 years for development or six weeks for development of a gone focus or anything like that, in a TB, in a non-compromised patient, the progression will be at a much higher pace, and the patient will deteriorate very soon and can get the symptoms very soon as compared to a normal healthy individual. HIV infected persons starting ART at a particular high risk of developing disease because of unmasking of clinically unrecognized disease. This you already know, you've seen so many patients. This would be one of your experiences where you have seen that initially at the time of diagnosis, you've screened for tuberculosis, you did not get any evidence of tuberculosis, you did not start ART. But once you have started ART, as the immunosuppressive competency begins, there is a chance that the latent infection will redevelop and you will have patient who developing tuberculosis after the patient has been put on ART. Next, please. Now, what is the pathogenesis? Now, isolated peripheral TB lymph node is usually due to reactivation of a disease at a site which was seeded hematogenously during primary TB infection, perhaps years earlier. So if I am infected today, it's not necessary. Mostly 90% of the patients who are exposed to a patient of tuberculosis may contain the disease. They may not suffer from the disease. They have the infection, but they are not diseased. But this infection could spread through the lymph nodes, lymphatic system, as well as your blood vessels and blood streams. This could spread and could lay down in your lymph nodes. And later on in the years gone by, if you are compromised due to any condition, there would be a reactivation of this disease. So TB lymph nodes more far is being due to the cause of reactivation of this latent infection. However, in immunocompromised cases, as may be the case in HIV, you can get a primary infection where, because of the immunocompromised status of the patient is unable to contain the initial infection. So there will be a accelerated spread of the disease. Patient can have miliary tuberculosis, can have lymph node simultaneously, and disseminated tuberculosis in all the organs. So this pattern of spread is known in immunocompromised patients. However, in a healthy individual, then mostly it is due to reactivation of some latent infection. Next, please. Now, what are the clinical presentations? Usually it depends upon the immune status of the patient. If it is a healthy patient, you would get sometimes just a cervical lymph node or maybe an axillary one site lymph node enlargement is this presentation. Patient may not have systemic infection because the bacterial load is less, may not have systemic symptoms like fever, cough, or weight loss. As you say, the 4S signs, they may not be present in a immunocompetent patient. But in a immunocompromised patient, as maybe in the case of HIV, the clinical presentation or the other symptoms are usually present in 60 to 80% of the patients. And this, apart from the lymph node, they may have fever, cough, or some kind of dissemination. It could be miliary, so maybe the breathless. In case it spreads to the brain, apart from lymph nodes, it is spreading to the brain. They can be unconscious, the worst part, or they could have some irritation, irritability, vomiting. So these are various different organs could be involved, giving different rise to different symptoms. So usually in a case of HIV, you will have patients with an lymph node, but usually they do give you some signs and symptoms of other organ involvement as well. So the other organ involvements could be just the lymph nodes in the lungs or abdomen, or other organs may be involved like your GI tract, your pulmonary TB, your CNS TB. So the usually with immunocompromised patients, HIV patients, where you will see that apart from lymph node, they almost what we've seen, certain studies have also shown that 80 to 90% of patients will have associated pulmonary tuberculosis. It is only in 10 to 20% of the cases where you will have just the isolated lymphadenopathy. Next, please. When you examine these patients, the lymph nodes are usually one or two, and then if there are many, they would be matted. They are not very hard, as in the case of malignancy. They have a rubbery kind of consistency, and if not attended to later on, they become fluctuant, soft, can rupture, and can form an abscess, and a draining sinus can be, and a tract can be seen. So these are the various stages of development of TB lymph node, where you will have just a small enlarged lymph node, mobile, discrete, easily palpable. You can move. It is not, the skin is healthy above it, but as the disease progresses, the surrounding structures as well as the surrounding lymph nodes will be involved, giving you a collection of lymph nodes. So that is what is called the matting of the lymph nodes. And then later on, if left untreated, form necrosis will occur. It will become soft and rupture. And as you can see in the stage 5, where it ruptures and a tract is formed. So these are the various stages where you can find the patient of TB lymph node. Next, please. Now, this, as I've already touched on, TB lymph node can be complicated by ulceration, fistula, or abscess formation. Now, in patients who are immunocompromised, apart from just the peripheral lymph node, which you could see as in your case of cervical lymph node and an axillary lymph node, the other organs which could be also involved, you can get an X-ray done, which is very, very essential. In your case, because it could be pulmonary TB, or if not pulmonary TB, the mediastinal lymph nodes can be involved. In these cases, you will see the mediastinum is slightly widened, and you can see the lymph nodes in the mediastinum. These mediastinal glands can enlarge and compress on your airways, and then patient can have collapse or can have breathlessness, and these symptoms can arise in these patients. Apart from mediastinal lymph nodes, the other organs which can be involved because of these lymph nodes are recurrent laryngeal nerve involvement. So you have change in voice due to involvement of vocal cord. Then there could be esophageal, because your food pipe, the esophagus is just nearby, it can rupture into it. You can, or initially just press on it. So it will be difficult for the patient to swallow. And then if it ruptures, then you can imagine that patient is again having burning sensation and all. So these are certain situations which you can see, and these situations, deteriorated conditions, are usually seen in an immunocompromised patient. Next, please. Apart from these lymph nodes, which I've touched upon, the mediastinal lymph nodes, there are other lymph nodes. That is, usually the abdominal lymph nodes are involved. These are the peritoneal lymph nodes. However, those near the liver or the hepatic lymph nodes can be involved and can lead to portal hypertension, portal vein thrombosis, where the patient will have a distended abdomen, and then you could see fine vessels on the abdomen. So all these are signs and symptoms of hepatic lymphadenopathy, hepatic lymph node involvement with portal hypertension, and patient would have jaundice, and a very bad situation patient would present with. Apart from this, the renal artery, somewhere near the kidneys, if the lymph nodes are involved, that time it will press upon the renal artery, and then patient can develop present you with hypertension. Next. Now, these what I've explained again, that is what is explained in this slide is what happens in an HIV co-infection. So most extrapulmonary TB cases, including TB lymph node, occurs among patients with HIV when the CD4 count falls below 300 cells per microliter. So that means the immune suppression is to such a degree that these are the diseases. Tuberculosis is one of the diseases when you will see the presentation of tuberculosis. So it usually falls below 300. Even in your patient, initially when he had defaulted earlier, he was much above 317, I think, or 78. And then when he presented to you this time, when you had retrieved the patient, it was just 58. So you can imagine, the more the fall in CD4 count, you should be very cautious and see for the dissemination of tuberculosis. In your case, get an X-ray done, get a CT abdomen done, get an ultrasound abdomen, look out for some other areas where you can see if there is any dissemination of the disease. Among patients with TB lymph node in the setting of HIV infection, there is a significant mycobacterial load with concomitant systemic findings like fever, sweats, and weight loss. That is what I've already explained to you, that usually with this kind of immunosuppression, patient does have all the symptoms of fever, cough, weight loss, anorexia, other site involvement signs and symptoms. Are usually because of the degree of immunosuppression, because of the CD4 count being less than 300, there are other opportunity infections also which they can present with. Abnormal chest X-ray is frequently observed. Normally, if in an immunocompetent patient, the chest X-ray findings are usually seen in just 20 to 40% if they are having TB lymph nodes. But in patients with HIV, approximately 70 to 80% of patients have some kind of a pulmonary lesion. So that is why whenever you have a patient of TB lymph node, do get a chest X-ray done to look out for pulmonary tuberculosis. Next, please. Patients with mediastinal and hilar lymph node involvement are likely to have active pulmonary TB also and may have symptoms include dyspnea and cough with expectoration. So you need to rule out pulmonary tuberculosis. This is, make it a habit, make it a rule that whenever someone, just do not let the patient go with the extrapulmonary tuberculosis. Please screen for TB at different sites as well. This is very important, more so in patients who are immunocompromised, that is the patients which you are seeing. Next, please. So these are certain pictures where you can see a sternal collapses just near the sternum. It's about to rupture, all red skin. So this is one of next. Here the patient is having scars. Some have ruptured already and leading to scar formation on her neck. On the right hand side, you can see a scar formation. So these are all sinuses and scars which patient initially must have not presented right in time, not have started treatment on time, leading to in itself. See, if you have some pus collection, it's definitely going to give waste somewhere. It needs to come out of your body. So that is a normal mechanism of your body to react to any kind of any boil also, it ruptures. So that is how this also ruptures. This is a very slow growing abscess, but definitely if left untreated, will definitely rupture. And these scars are very, very difficult to heal. So you make it a point, these lymph nodes should not be left untreated to give you these kind of scarrings. So whenever possible, aspirate, treat the patient as soon as possible. With treatment, these patients do respond very well to the treatment. It is lymph node TB is not something difficult to treat. You will be able to treat with the standard medication. But when given on time, it does not lead to these kind of sinuses and scars. Next, please. Now, once you have a patient with TB lymph or a lymphadenopathy, how do you go ahead with your diagnosis? First and foremost, as you know, when you have someone with pulmonary tuberculosis, you know you have to get your sputum done. Why do you get this sputum done? To get your microbiological evidence of the disease, right? So that is why you will confirm that it is a disease. So in these cases, you have to have a histopathological diagnosis. So in histopathological diagnosis, first you do a fine needle aspiration. In this, nothing but a 21 to 23 gauge needle is put into the lymph node. You aspirate. Just remember, whenever you are doing it, do it in a non-dependent area. As any, whichever there is a dependent, if you normal abscesses are drained in a dependent area. So in these TB lymph nodes, you have to do it from a non-dependent area so that in case there is a point, it does not rupture through it. So you have to avoid that. That is why you do the FNAC from a non-dependent area. Remove the whatever fluid you can get from this area, make a slide out of it, send it for cytology, and some sample you will send it for CBNAT, that is amplification test for, or expert, as you know, you must be sending for pulmonary tuberculosis also. CBNAT you have to send. This is very, very essential, more so in your case, because right in the beginning, you should differentiate whether this is a sensitive tuberculosis or a resistant tuberculosis. Because giving a wrong treatment is doing more harm rather than not doing anything. It's better not to treat a patient rather than giving a wrong treatment. So always it is advisable that the diagnosis be made with CBNAT. Resistance pattern may be ruled out right in the beginning. If there is resistant, there's a whole lot of different drugs that you have to give. And if it is sensitive, it's very easy, same as the normal medications that you give. So resistance has to be ruled out right in the beginning. In your case also, it is very good that you had sent the CBNAT report, but you got the report almost 1.5 to 2 months later. CBNAT report is available within hours. So at the most 2 days, at the most. So try and retrieve these patients. You will lose it as it is. This patient was lost to follow-up. So you should try and keep these patients in your loop as much as possible. The sooner you get the reports, the sooner you put the patient on the right treatment, and you are able to hold this patient into your system. This is where your counseling and all those things will play. And with your patient, it is very, very essential. Counseling will have a major role because he is known to default. So default is not acceptable either in HIV nor in TB. So you have to be very, very cautious for that. So now after FNAC, once you have diagnosed in cytology as well as expert, you have diagnosed that is tuberculosis. Now for the yield of FNAC in an immunocompetent patient, the FNAC cytology is something like 70 to 75%. It is not that in 100% of patients you will get FNAC positive. Okay, but in your cases, you did get patients where you had said that they had commented as cold abscess because of the epithelioid cells and abscess because of the number of neutrophils. Normally, in case of TB, you will see that it is the epithelioid cells, the granuloma formation. But because your patient was immunocompromised, there would be more of necrosis. Later on, he has presented to more of necrosis, so more of neutrophils were present. The yield when you do an FNAC and you do a cytology and you prepare a slide for AFB, in immunocompetent patients, very few patients you will see as AFB positive. But because the mycobacterial load in patients of HIV is very high, the chances that you get an AFB positive in your FNAC is high as compared to your immunocompetent patient. Next, please. Sometimes it is possible that, as I've already told you, it is only in 70% of the cases where you will be able to make the diagnosis with an FNAC. Now, the next step would be, in case you are not able to do so, get an excisional biopsy. That is when you put an excision and take out a piece of that lymph node and send it for histopathology. Again, the histopathology, you will see the granuloma, the epithelioid cells, and those typical histology. And in one of the studies, they had seen that in FNAC, it was seen in positive with, they could make the diagnosis with 60 to 70% of patients. But with excisional biopsy, they could make the diagnosis in 100% of patients. So in case you are not able to get the result with FNAC, go ahead and do the excisional biopsy. Next, please. Now then comes the nucleic acid amplification test, or what you know call it as CBNAT, or you call it as expert. This again, as I've already emphasized, is very essential, because not only it helps in diagnosis, but it also helps you in diagnosing whether the patient is resistant to rifampicin or not. Because if it is rifampicin sensitive, you give another drug. If it is resistant, you know that is MDR, and you need to treat it differently. We'll have a longer duration of treatment. We'll have different drugs. So this is an essential, right in the beginning, should be done. So while you're doing CBNAT, another thing which you need to remember is, please do not repeat the CBNAT further in the follow-up of the patient, because this CBNAT can remain positive. It can be positive because of dead bacilli also. So follow-up should not be done with CBNAT. In case if you want to do the follow-up, it should be done with culture and not with CBNAT. So this I've highlighted right in the with red, that this should not be used to monitor the response. So CBNAT can be used for diagnosis, but not for follow-up or monitoring of the patient. It is not advisable, because you are going to pick up dead bacilli also. So you do not actually know whether it is because of live infection or a still persisting infection, or it is just the dead bacilli. So do not use for monitoring. Next, please. Now, the gold standard for diagnosis is culture. Earlier you used to do the LJ medium, as you know, which used to take weeks for the report to come, 42 days. Okay, so now you are usually sending the liquid cultures. Now these liquid cultures are available earlier also, and then you can do the LPA also, line prone assay also. So but however, culture is the gold standard. In case you have anywhere during the treatment you feel that the patient is not responding, and you want to diagnose whether this patient could be developing some kind of a resistance, that time you should get a culture done, because that is when they will try and grow the bacilli. And if there is growth, that means the bacilli are live, and then they will detect the resistance pattern, and then only you will be able to tell whether the patient is responding to the treatment or not. Right? Next, please. Now, apart from these diagnoses, the other things which you have to, these number of investigations would help you to make the diagnosis, but there are certain associated which are essential imaging techniques, like the chest X-ray. Chest X-ray, more so I've already emphasized in your case, that should be done, because almost in 90% of your cases, you will have a pulmonary involvement. Get a chest X-ray done to see if he has a pulmonary involvement, or if not a pulmonary, maybe a mediastinal lymphadenopathy, right? Next, please. So this is an X-ray. In the first X-ray, you can see there's a widened white area just next to the trachea. These are the paratracheal lymph nodes. In the another limb, you can see a patch of collapse. This is because of a lymph node at the hilar, right hilar, and then there is a patch of collapse, right upper lobe collapse. So this is typically the changes that you can see in a patient who has TB lymph node. Next, please. This is ultrasonography. You can, if you need, you can get, but it is not an essential to get an ultrasound of the organ, because for diagnosis, ultrasound is not going to help you in any ways. It is only when you've done everything and you are unable to localize the lymph node and you're not getting the aspirate, yes, you can get an ultrasound done where you can localize and then do the FNAC and get the sample. Otherwise, on a normal days, we usually do not get ultrasound done for these TB lymph nodes. And in case you do get an ultrasound done, you would see that usually these patients present with cystic necrosis, matted, and they are heterogeneous and not homogeneous. Next, please. Other things which could help in diagnosis would be your Montu test or TST. Again, in HIV, not very beneficial, because this depends upon the immune reaction of the body. If the patient is immunocompetent, in 74 to 100% of the patients, you will get a positive TST, and that helps you in the diagnosis of it collaborates your diagnosis. But in HIV, even a negative report does not necessarily mean that patient does not have TB, because it is, again, this is an immunological reaction. And in case in HIV, as it is, the patient is immunocompromised, so he is not going to develop this kind of a reaction, and TB, TST or MON2 test would be falsely negative. So this should not be IGRA test, and these tests should not be your main way on which you depend upon for diagnosis. Now, sputum, smear and culture, essential only when you have a pulmonary disease associated, or if the patient is presenting you with those symptoms. Next, please. Bronchoscopy. Now, sometimes, as in your case, if you get an X-ray done, probably you see that the patient does not have any cough, but you get an X-ray done, you see there is a lesion, he's not developing any sputum. So that is when you can do a bronchoscopy. Sometimes these mediastinal lymph nodes, if they are there, they compress, and then there are secretions, and then you have to do a diagnostic as well as therapeutic bronchoscopy. Lymph nodes, if patient has just the mediastinal lymph nodes, no peripheral lymph nodes, again bronchoscopy, EBUS, that is the endobronchial ultrasound guided transbronchial needle aspiration you have to do, wherein you take the sample from the mediastinal lymph nodes and then send for cytology and CBNAT. Rarely, because normally with immunocompromised situations and disseminated, you do have certain peripheral lymph nodes which are more easy accessible rather than going in for these difficult procedures, because these difficult procedures need expertise for all these things, and sometimes in the periphery these are not available. Thankfully, with immunocompromised patients, you have peripheral lymph nodes. Those are easily accessible. Get an FNAC done or an excision biopsy if required. Next, please. Now, the treatment part. When you come to the treatment, nothing different from the pulmonary tuberculosis. As you are being aware, if it is a sensitive tuberculosis, you give 2 months of 4-drug regimen followed by 4 months of 3-drug regimen. That is what you do in pulmonary tuberculosis. Same is true for these TB lymph node also. Very rarely you may be required to extend the treatment. Sometimes the patient, because this is a possible bacillary disease, sometimes it takes time to respond. So you can sometimes extend the treatment to 9 months as well. Very few instances, however, most of them respond to 6 months of treatment. No difference between treatment in an immunocompetent or an immunocompromised patient. Same regimen as you are given. You already know you have started your treatment in the patient, and no longer is it called a CAT1, it is called as drug sensitive regimen or a drug resistant regimen. So your case thankfully was a drug sensitive, should respond to 6 months. At the most, if required, you can extend for another 3 months. Okay, it depends upon, you have to keep the patient in follow-up and assess. Now, long duration of therapy may be sometimes required if there is suboptimal response, or they do not tolerate the first-line medication, or patient has some other infection due to resistant organism. So these times, actually, you need collaboration with some chest physicians who would guide through during the treatment. By far, however, the treatment regimen remains the same as in pulmonary tuberculosis, which you are already aware of, and giving treatment and succeeding in most of the patients. Next, please. Now, when does this surgical is there any role of surgery in these patients? The surgery only if required, if the lymph nodes are increasing too much in size, patient is having trouble, you can get it aspirated. Or sometimes there is a tract already ruptured, there's a tract, so you have to remove that tract, otherwise there will be persistent discharge. So that is when you have to require surgery. Or when these lymph nodes have mediastinal lymph nodes compressing upon some structure and causing problem, that is when you can have the surgery is required. Otherwise, more or less, surgery is not required. Patients respond very well to your standard anti-TB treatment drugs. Next, please. Next. Okay, now when you are seeing for the response to therapy, normally these lymph nodes decrease in size over 6 months. Sometimes, rarely at the end of a treatment, very small lymph nodes can persist, but you need not do anything. Less than 1 centimeter, just leave it, reassure the patient, that should be sufficient. But however, you will see a paradoxical reaction. This is nothing but there is an abnormal increase in the size of the lymph node or the number of lymph nodes would suddenly increase at different sites, and you will be afraid and you will think over why, what is happening? Is my patient not responding to my treatment? Is he developing resistance? It always remember, you are used to seeing iris in reconstitution syndromes. You are used to seeing patients. It is something like that only. The patient, when you put on ART and ATT together, there would be certain times increase in the size, but they usually, you do a culture, you do and it is negative, and you just sometimes have to just observe or maybe add steroids, and they usually respond to the treatment. However, just don't rule out that it is a paradoxical reaction. You have to rule out resistance, rule out that the patient is not is compliant to the treatment, is not defaulting, and there's no other infection or some alternative diagnosis, especially in the case of HIV, where you need to rule out certain other opportunistic infections like fungal infections or maybe malignancy, which are very known. Lymphomas are known in HIV patients. So you need to be aware of these situations so that you can make the diagnosis. However, with paradoxical reactions, it is something like an iris, which you've seen. There would be an increase in the size or the number of lymph nodes. Do not fear, just see that it is not a resistance has developed. If you are sure, then just treat it, leave it aside. You can treat, or maybe if it is compressing, you can add on a steroid, and that helps in these cases. Next, please. Now I will just go through two of the examples so that it will help you in understanding the picture more clearly. This, we had a 48-year-old female initially, which presented with a left-sided cervical lymph node. She complained of chronic dry cough, but no other symptoms or pulmonary symptoms. Now, when we did a radio chest X-ray, it showed a left perihilar shadowing. Her TST was 11 mm, and because she had a pulmonary lesion on X-ray and did not produce sputum, we did a bronchoscopy, and then the endobronchial TB was tree was normal. The secretions were taken and sent it for culture as well as CBNAT, and HIV serology was reactive in this case. Next, please. So this was the X-ray. You can, in the first X-ray, you can see a left perihilar shadowing. After because it was a sensitive TB, we started her on treatment, standard treatment, 4-drug regimen. She responded to treatment after 2 months. We decreased the medicines to 3 drugs after 2 months, and she was on 3 drugs HRE. But after 4 months, she developed worsening of the hilar lesion. You can see. Next, please. And she also had some symptoms. Breathlessness also, and then over 15 days, by the time we could investigate her, she developed a left upper zone collapse. This is because of the lymph node which must have compressed on it, and there is a collapse. Next, please. So that time we did a bronchoscopy, and you can, as you can see, that at this is the A. When you see the left hand corner, there is a right main bronchus. The other one, which is completely blocked, is the left upper lobe bronchus, which is completely obstructed by the lesion. We put normal saline and washed it, and we got cleared. And next, please. These washings which we had taken was negative for for AFB, and the export or CBNAT was also negative, because the culture was negative, because the CBNAT was negative. We assumed there were no other symptoms of fever, though she did have breathlessness, but that was explainable on the collapse. So we concluded that this is not that she has defaulted, she took regular treatment. So we ruled out default. We saw to it that she was taking complete medication. We ruled out active tuberculosis or a resistance, and then made the conclusion, yes, that this is a paradoxical reaction. So we just kept her in observation, started steroid for a short duration of 15 days. She responded excellently, and as you had seen in the earlier, the last X-ray was completely normal. So within 6 months, this patient responded. So this was a case of paradoxical reaction where we ruled out active TB at that time, gave steroids, she responded. Another is a 20-year-old female which presented to the OPD with a right cervical lymph node. She did not have any chest complaints. We did an FNAC, which was suggestive of TB lesion, did a CBNAT, which showed sensitive to rifampicin. The chest X-ray was normal. HIV was non-reactive in this case. After 2 months of treatment with standard drugs, the patient was asymptomatic and the lymph node was not palpable. Next, please. So we changed the treatment to the continuation phase. But 5 months down the line, that is at 5 months of treatment, she developed another lymph node in her left axilla. And she was developing cough as well as expectoration. So we did an FNSC from that side, that is the axilla. AFB was positive with epithelioid cell granuloma formation, suggested of TB. We did an expert or CB-NAT also, which showed that it was resistance to rifampicin. Major put later on the report was that it was resistant to rifampicin and INH. Chest X-ray, which we did, showed a right upper lobe lesion. Sputum sample was also sent, and rifampicin resistance was detected. So in this case, can you show the X-ray? Next slide, please. So this was the right cervical lymph node which she presented. Later on, 5 months down the line, she developed a left axillary lymph node, quite big in size. Next, please. This was the X-ray when she presented to us after 5 months of treatment. You can see there's a cavitary lesion in the right upper zone. She was developing cough and fever also. So we sent a sputum, diagnosed as PTB and a resistant one. So you cannot just see that, okay, she has developed a lymph node while on treatment, probably this is just a paradoxical reaction. You cannot just say it is a paradox. Rule out other causes. Once the resistance, compliance, everything is taken care of, you're confident, yes, the patient has taken treatment completely, there is no evidence of relapse or a failure, then you put the patient as paradoxical reaction. The patient responded well once we shipped her MDR treatment regimen. Now, just to remember, few points to remember, the differential diagnosis of isolated peripheral lymphadenopathy in PLHIV would be Hodgkin's lymphoma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, NTM, and fungal infections. Multimodality diagnostic approach increases the yield. So FNSC, excisional biopsy, all together should help you out. Resistance to rifampicin should be ruled out right in the beginning. Always rule out coexistent pulmonary disease. Treatment is with standard drug regimen as for any immunocompetent patient, and paradoxical reactions are known. So be careful, watch for it as and when required. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an excellent presentation, and you covered almost all the aspects and very beautifully. So as I pull up the post-test poll, I will open this discussion for open house. Anybody wants to ask any question or share any experience? And meanwhile, please attempt your post-test poll also. Kindly pull up the post-test poll.
Yeah, so while we were discussing, and we have received one question from ART Plus Center Tirupati, that how can we differentiate between reactivated TB and a fresh infection?
See, it is usually genetic, where you, in case you have some sample from the previous disease pattern, that time you have some genetic studies done to see what kind of genetic makeup was there. And then this time when the patient has tuberculosis, you again do the same test on the sputum, and then you see whether it is of the same genetic makeup. Usually you do not do that. You just rule out the resistance. What is the difference whether it is reactivated or reinfection? That's not going to make any difference to the patient treatment. The main difference is, concern is to treat the patient. Reactivation or reinfection, main concern should be your resistance, drug sensitive or drug resistant. That is to be ruled out. And if you want to do it, that's a genetic study. You should have an initial genetic makeup of the patient, sputum sample, and then do it this time. You compare the two, and you will know whether it is reinfection or reactivation. Though not needed, it is kind of a research if you want to do, but with this our status where the community load is so high, prevalence of TB is so high, it does not matter whether it is reinfection or reactivation.
Okay, there is one thing, thanks ma'am for answering that question. And there is one thing which we observed, that this patient has started on ART on dolutegravir regimen. So patient is on TLD, and the additional dose of dolutegravir 50 milligram OD. So just for the benefit of the house where we have, so patient, because he is having a co-infection with tuberculosis, So if the patient is on dolutegravir based regimen, then we give an additional dose 50 milligram of DDG to the patient, which should be taken at 12 hours apart. So I think this is an observation which my ART colleagues must have made in this patient as well. So I think ART Center has very beautifully, followed the guidelines, national guidelines when the patient is on DTG based regimen.
My ART Center has some questions.
Good evening, madam. Very nice talk with extrapulmonary causes or lymphadenopathy, tuberculosis causes. I am Dr. T. Murali Venkateswarao, Medicine HOD. Madam, good evening, madam. How long to give this steroid for this exaggeration of the paradoxical response of the tuberculosis in a PLHIV? How much dose can we give? Up to how much and up to how long?
Usually 2 to 3 weeks sufficient. The patient starts responding, and initially it is just to decrease inflammation and inflammatory response. So even a short duration of 2 weeks is sufficient, because then the patient responds on itself. Most of the times they have seen to 70 to 80% of the times you do not require to start steroids as well. You just need to observe the patient. Only if they have some kind of a symptoms, like in this case we had a collapse and patient was breathless, a short duration of 15 days was enough for patient to recover, recover, and then you just have to keep the patient on follow-up. Nothing much has to be done after it. And not all paradoxical, I should re-emphasize on this, that not all paradoxical reactions would require steroids for treatment.
So depending on the clinical situation, yes, we have to give how long it is.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Can I add to this one, madam? It is recommended 1 to 2 milligram per kg body weight of prednisolone. So
0.5 to 1 milligram per kg is good enough, sir. Don't go into too higher dose. Usually not required, because yours is just a peripheral lymphadenopathy. It is only in mediastinal lymph nodes where the patient, it compresses on the trachea, and patient can have stridor and all. That is when you need to have. Otherwise, normal circumstances, they do not require anything. Just close observation, reassurance, counseling. Especially in your case, I would re-emphasize that counseling would play a very, very major role, because your patient tends to default. This time also, I think he came back to you after some time. It was difficult for you to retrieve the patient. So keep a close watch. Maybe you can call him daily for your treatment at your center, rather than having some other facility for him. Don't give him that choice.
No, just to add on to that, probably initially the site centers might have told that RPS, and you have to rule out the diabetic. This one also, you have to see that immunocompromised. Add on to that.
So can you...
RBS, FBS, PPBS have done or not? I don't know. Diabetic status, because as per the guidelines, they have to do RBS also.
Yes, yes, of course. See, those guidelines, whatever are for pulmonary tuberculosis, whatever you have to do sugar. So for all immunocompetent patients of TB, we have to get HIV and sugar done. So that is overboard for everyone, whether extrapulmonary or pulmonary. That's overboard for everyone.
Dr. Vanna, can I request you to have post-test poll answers, as we are shooting the time? Post-test poll. Can we discuss the questions?
Yeah, sure, Dr. Nanya. So while everyone is doing the post-test polls, we are having 3 questions on our screen. One talks about like tuberculosis lymphadenitis is which type of TB. So now I think after the presentation, we know that it is a type of extrapulmonary TB. So the right answer is option 1. The second question is that among PLHIV, most EPTB cases occur when CD4 count is what? So I think Madam has beautifully explained, very well explained, that when patient is having lower CD4 count, so then the patient is having more chances of contracting this EPTB. So the correct answer is the lowest one, that is less than 300 cells microliter, option 1. And last question says about what should be the differential, or what could be the differential diagnosis of isolated peripheral lymphadenopathy in PLHIV? So here we have options in Hodgkin's lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we know the answer is both. where both these lymphoma are the lymphatic cancer with different types of lymphocyte involved. And the answer is this because these may have same presentation with symptoms like fever, sweating, and weight loss, and often present with non-painful enlarged lymph nodes in neck or under the arms or in the groin. So they mimic that, and is the differential diagnosis of that.
Thank you, Dr. Vanna. And I think there was a lot that we learned today, and but it's very difficult to imbibe all of it in one go. So I would recommend all of you please go through our recording sessions and go through this dialectic again, and so that you can learn more out of it, and you can absorb more out of it by doing it in a relaxed way, because sometimes you don't actually get all the points. And before I could thank everybody, I would like Dr. Sethi to say some concluding remarks and for the session.
Thank you, Dr. Nanne and Dr. Vanna. And as I've concerning the case, I've already talked about whatever the things should be done or needs to be done further. And just see to it that whenever you have a patient of extrapulmonary tuberculosis, rule out pulmonary tuberculosis. That should be it's a thumb rule for everyone. So please do follow that. Treatment remains the same. And thank you everyone for having me. And it was a pleasure talking to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, from all our team, from Share India, from ECO, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Vanna. And thank you all of you, all the ART centers who have joined us today. Thank you very much for joining the session today.
Yeah, thank you everyone. So while we have all winding up, but still on our screen, we have seen a question from Dr. Anand Rao from ART Plus Center, Tirupati. This is not exactly related to the case, but he just wants to know that as after AIDS epidemic, we are seeing a resurgence of TB. So why there is not a resurgence of leprosy cases? So I think this is certainly, sir, as you said, yes, this is an off topic, certainly. So maybe because we are off the time, so we can have this discussion on and on because we are still on this platform. So when we see next week, we can have this discussion surely on that day.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
It is possible that the TB has a latent infection phase, and more than 1/3, 40% or more of population of India is infected with TB. Whereas leprosy, that phase is not there as similar to TB. That may be the reason why we don't have a resurgence of leprosy as compared to TB.
So here we have some answers from this. So I think Dr. Rao must have got some answer and some insight on that, and maybe we can have a lot elaborative discussion on the thing in later, in coming future initiative sessions. So thank you, sir, from NTI. Thanks, sir, for answering that. And I think it's time for us to say goodbye and see you next week. I think again we would be having northern region with us. So any of you who would like to again join us for the same case are free to join us. So thank you everyone. Thank you.